Jemima!" exclaimed Miss Pinkerton in the largest capitals. "Are you in your senses? Replace the dictionary in the closet, and never venture to take such a liberty in future." Miss Sedley's papa was a merchant in London and a man of some wealth, whereas Miss Sharp was an articled pupil, for whom Miss Pinkerton had done, as she thought, quite enough, without conferring upon her at parting the high honour of the dictionary. Although schoolmistresses' letters are to be trusted no more nor less than churchyard epitaphs, yet, as it sometimes happens that a person departs this life who is really deserving of all the praises the stone-cutter carves over his bones, so in academies of the male and female sex it occurs every now and then that the pupil is fully worthy of the praises bestowed by the disinterested instructor. Now, Miss Amelia Sedley was a young lady of this singular species, and deserved not only all that Miss Pinkerton said in her praise, but had many charming qualities which that pompous old Minerva of a woman could not see, from the differences of rank and age between her pupil and herself. She had such a kindly, smiling, tender, gentle, generous heart of her own as won the love of everybody who came near her, from Minerva herself down to the poor girl in the scullery and the one-eyed tart woman's daughter. Miss Schwartz, the rich, woolly-haired mulatto from St. Kitts, on the day Amelia went away, was in such a passion of tears that they were obliged to send for Dr. Floss and half-tipsify her with sal volatile. As we're to see a great deal of Amelia, there's no harm in saying at the outset of our acquaintance that she was a dear little creature. Her face blushed with rosy health, and her lips with the freshest of smiles, and she had a pair of eyes which sparkled with the brightest and honestest good humour, except indeed when they filled with tears, and that was a great deal too often, for the silly thing would cry over a dead canary bird. Well, then, the hour for parting came, and the grief of that moment was considerably lessened by the admirable discourse which Miss Pinkerton addressed to her pupil. "You'll go in and say good-bye to Miss Pinkerton, Becky," said Miss Jemima to a young lady of whom nobody took any notice, and who was coming downstairs with her own bandbox. "I suppose I must," said Miss Sharp calmly, and much to the wonder of Miss Jemima. And the latter having knocked at the door and receiving permission to come in, Miss Sharp advanced in a very unconcerned manner, and said in French and with perfect accent, "Mademoiselle, je viens vous faire mes adieux." Miss Pinkerton did not understand French. She only directed those who did. But biting her lips and throwing up her venerable and Roman-nosed head, on top of which figured a large, solemn turban, she said, "Miss Sharp, I wish you a good morning." Then came the struggle and parting below. Words refused to tell it. The embracing was over. They parted. That is, Miss Sedley parted from her friends. Miss Sharp had demurely entered the carriage some minutes before. Nobody cried for leaving her. Sambo slammed the carriage door on his young weeping mistress. He sprang up behind the carriage. "Stop!" cried Miss Jemima, rushing to the gate with a parcel. "It's some sandwiches, my dear," she said to Amelia, "and Becky Sharp. Here's a book for you that my sister, that is Johnson's dictionary, you know. You mustn't leave us without that. Goodbye. Drive on, coachman. God bless you." And the kind creature retreated into the garden overcome with emotion. But lo! And just as the coach drove off, Miss Sharp put her pale face out of the window and actually flung the book back into the garden. This almost caused Jemima to faint with terror. "Well, I never," said she. And so, farewell to Chiswick Mall. "How could you do so, Rebecca?" at last Amelia said after a pause. "I hate the whole house," said Miss Sharp in a fury. "I hope I may never set eyes on it again. But that talking French to Miss Pinkerton was capital fun, wasn't it? I believe it was that which made her part with me, and so thank heaven for French. Vive la France! Vive l'Empereur! Vive Bonaparte!" "Oh, Rebecca, for shame!" cried Miss Sedley, for in those days in England to say, "Long live Bonaparte,"